I'm Lauren Green, and you're in the Strategy Room. Aides from Dr. Ben Carson and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump's campaigns are communicating with the Secret Service, requesting official protection to be given to the candidates. While it is rare for Secret Service protection to be given before the party's nomination, official protection will likely be granted based on threats of these two candidates. Now, here with reaction are political strategists Sigmund and Brian Morgenstern. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Brian, let me start with you. So what do you make of this, these two candidates requesting Secret Service, Ben Carson and Donald Trump?
Well, they're, at the top of the polls. They've been there for a while. I hear that there are threats that they're basing this request on, and that's how the Secret Service is assessing it. And that's fine. Nobody wants a presidential candidate to be attacked or in danger. So I assume they're doing what's right for them. From a political angle, I suppose it could have an air of legitimacy that it can add to a campaign. I don't think that's a consideration. It might just be a byproduct. But, yeah, I mean, it's fine. If they're under threat, they should have protection.
You know, Steve, Hillary Clinton gets Secret Service by reason because she's the former First Lady. So, but Ben Carson, Donald Trump, what do you make of that?
Look, I think the Secret Service makes these determinations. The candidates and their campaigns make the requests, and the Secret Service makes the determinations. If they determine that there's a legitimate security threat and that they need Secret Service protection, I don't think any of us can really know the facts to question that. What it means politically, I think it means absolutely nothing politically, to be honest with you. I mean, just the very fact of it is maybe an interesting story to the press, maybe interesting for us to talk about, but I don't think it has an impact one iota on their poll numbers or their chances of success. You know,
Brian, both Donald Trump and Ben Carson are saying that the threats were just onerous. I mean, they were some really bad stuff. But Trump already has his private Secret Service. I mean, so we can kind of, okay, maybe, but Ben Carson is a little bit different. Should there be a difference that way?
Well,
you can afford your own Trump, but Ben Carson, we know that he's not a billionaire.
Well, I suppose that could factor in. I don't think Secret Service protection is need-based. If it were need-based, I don't think the Clintons would have it either, because they're not doing so poorly. But look, both these guys have big crowds, and I think that's part of it. I mean, Donald Trump did that rally in Arizona where he had 30,000 people. He did something at the arena in Dallas where he had 20,000 people. When you have crowds that size, I think it might make some sense to bring in a more legitimate security force than, with more access to information than necessarily a private organization might have.
Yeah, this is not unprecedented, though. Barack Obama did have Secret Service in his 2008 campaign before the nomination because there were obvious threats. He was the first black candidate to really be close to the presidency, and so they deemed that a huge threat. But in this case, do you think it has the same precedent?
Yeah, look, I think in part it's about the kind of onerous and divisive politics that we have in this country right now, right? Because it is the language that a lot of people use when they're in opposition in politics now, instead of a language of we disagree with you and how do we get to common ground. It's a language, built on social media of yelling and screaming at each other and often in anonymity making threats to people in public life. So in some ways, it's an unfortunate byproduct of the politics that we have right now, but it also is a reality. And as I said, if the Secret Service thinks those kinds of threats are real and are to be taken seriously, and they ought to have Secret Service protection, then I completely agree with that.
But sorry, Brian, but I have to imagine that the Jeb Bushes and the other people are actually getting threats. Should they be providing Secret Service protection to all of the candidates, regardless of if they're frontrunner or 1%?
Well, there are not unlimited resources. There has to be some decision made based on the level of the threat. And I think that when we get a little closer to the election, when you get about 4 weeks out from voting, so we're talking about New Year's Day, when about 4 weeks before the primaries start, when the math starts to shift dramatically, well, when somebody else takes the lead, then somebody else may start to get a lot more threats. And so, whichever candidates end up being close to the or closer to the finish line are probably going to end up with protection as well. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the end, it shouldn't be poll-based. I mean, it should be threat-based, but the reality is the two do tend to track one another because the higher you get in the polls, the more attention you get. Hillary Clinton has been somebody who's been in the public eye and under public scrutiny for 25 years. So, of course, the threats are very significant to her. Trump and Carson have risen in the public consciousness because of where they are in the polls, and I imagine that there's some security risk associated with that.
All right, I want to thank you very much, Steve and Brian, for being here.
Thank you.
And you want to check out foxnews.com for more on the 2016 presidential race. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching.